Hi friends, welcome to another live session on India UGC 19 JRF Paper 1. So in this today's session, we'll be looking at a topic that is from the module ICT, Information and Communication Technology. So for people who are not that exposed to technology or computers, you might have a thought that this area is a little bit difficult for us, that kind of a thought. But that is a wrong notion. You don't have to think like that, because the many things that we are dealing in this particular module are things that we have heard somewhere or we have already learned in our school level and all that. Obviously, there are areas that we have to learn more. But still, if you learn, if you spend little time and little effort, you can. If you spend little time and little effort in this area, you can score good marks for this module as well. So ICT is a module which comprises of various areas. You have to study about the computers, the parts of computers, then you have the generations of computers, network, then the programming languages, so on and so forth. So in today's session, we'll be looking at one of the most important topics that comes under the module ICT or Information and Communication Technology, and that is programming languages. So before moving into the programming languages, we'll be first looking at the question, what is a program? So initially, we'll be trying to understand the question, what is a program? Then we'll be moving to the area programming languages. So what is a program? So program is basically an organized list of instructions that you're giving to the computer. So you need the computer to act in specific ways. It has to do specific tasks, right? So for that purpose, you have to give specific instructions to the computer. So the programs are these kinds of instructions that can be executed by a computer. So you're giving those programs to the computer so that the computer can execute those instructions and the computer will be performing specific tasks. So that is a program. Program is an organized list of instructions that can be executed by a computer to perform a specific task. So first we looked at the concept of program, and this program contains a list of variables. So you are giving these programs, and this program is comprises of different variables, and you're also giving certain list of directions or statements. That means when you are giving a program to a computer, you are giving certain variables, and you're also giving certain statements or certain list of direction for the computer to execute those instructions. So the program consists, or it contains, of a list of variables and a list of directions that you can call it as statements that tell the computer what to do with these variables. So you have certain variables and also certain directions. Both these things together forms a program, and these directions will tell the computer what to do with the variables that you have in the program. So that is a program is all about. And the variables that we are giving, or the variables that are there in the program, that can be in the form of numbers. They are in numeric data, text, or graphical images. So initially we have looked into the question, what is a program? Program is basically a list of instructions that we are giving to the computer so the computer can execute the specific task. And these program consist of variables and also list of directions, or you can call it the statements that tell the computer what to do with these variables. And these variables can be in the form of numerical data and also text or graphical images. Now we are moving to the programming languages. We all know that for communication, we need a language, right? To communicate, to convey things, to convey messages, or to give instructions, we need language. Likewise, the computers also requires a kind of language so that we can give the instructions to the computer, and this language should be understood by the computer. So that kind of a language that the computer could understand can be termed as computer programming languages. So programming languages, or the computer programming languages, allow us to give instructions to a computer in a language the computer understands. So we already said that what is a program? Program is a list of instructions, and we have to give these instructions to the computer, but the computer has to understand the instructions, right? So we have to use a language in order to convey these instructions, and this language should be understood by the computer. So that language which the computer can understand can be called as computer programming languages. So basically the computer programming languages allows us to give instructions to a computer in a language that computer understands. So that is the language of the computer, the language the computer can understand. So programming languages are those kinds of languages the computer can understand, and that are the languages that we are using in order to give instructions to the computer as well. So we know that if we consider the human languages, we have a wide range of varieties, right? If we take our country for an example, we have a lot of languages. We have Malayalam, Tamil, Hindi, Marathi, Telugu, and all kind of languages, right? Likewise, computer programming languages are also a group of languages. There is an array of computer programming languages, or you have different types of computer programming languages. Just as many human-based languages exist, there are an array of computer programming languages that programmers can use to communicate with a computer. So as we have already said, like the human languages, as we have a lot of languages with us, the computer programming languages can be also can be considered as a group of different types of languages. And why these languages exist? The programmers use these languages in order to communicate with the computer, in order to give the instructions to a computer. So basically, what is the use of a computer programming languages? These languages are used to write programs. We have already discussed the question, what is a program? So these languages are used to write programs for commanding the computer about what to do and how to do. So basically, the computer programming languages are used in order to write the programs. What are programs? Programs are the instructions that we are giving to the computer, right? So these computer programming languages are used in order to write programs for commanding the computer about what to do and how to do. Basically, we are using these languages, the computer programming languages, in order to give instructions that can be called as programs to the computer. So that is the basic idea. Now we are moving to a few examples of programming languages. You have COBOL, which is used for business applications. So COBOL is a language, programming language that we are using for business applications. Then we have Fortran, which is used for engineering and scientific applications. Then we have Pascal, which is used for general purposes and also for teaching tools, which is used as a teaching tool as well. Then you have C and C++, that is also used for general purposes. And Prolog is a language that we are using for AI or artificial intelligence. And then we have the Java. Java is the most popular and familiar languages among these. So Java is also a general or purpose programming. Then you have .NET, that is also used for general purposes and also for web applications. So these are some of the few of the examples that we have under the computer programming languages. So we have discussed what is a program, and also we have discussed about programming languages. So now we have categorized. So we have two categories of programming languages. The programming languages can be categorized into two groups or two types. So what are those programming languages? They are low-level languages and high-level languages. So under programming languages, we have low-level languages and high-level languages. So now we will be looking at these two languages, low-level languages and high-level languages in detail. So what is a low-level language? A low-level language is the basic computer instructions, or better known as machine codes. So low-level languages can be called as machine codes. They are machine-oriented language. Or in other words, to make it more understandable, this is the language that the computer can easily understand. It is the language of the computer. So it is a machine-oriented language. You can call it as a machine code. And this is a language that the computer can easily understand. So what is the main function of a low-level language? The low-level language is used to interact with the hardware of the computer. So basically, programming languages can be divided into two types: low-level languages and high-level languages. And firstly, we are looking into the low-level languages. Low-level languages can be also called as machine codes. So they are basic computer instructions. They are machine-oriented languages. Or in other words, you can say it as it is the language that the computer can easily understand. Okay, so what is the main function of low level languages? It is used in order to communicate directly to the hardware of the computer. So under low level languages, we have another categorization. So we said programming languages can be divided into two types: low level languages and high level languages. And again, in low level languages, we have two types of languages, which includes machine language and assembly language. Okay, so programming language can be categorized into low level languages and high level languages, and now we are focusing on the low level languages, and that can be again divided into two types, which includes machine language and assembly language, or these are the two types of low level languages. So in machine language, we are using binary codes, whereas in assembly languages, we are using mnemonic codes, or we are using short forms in order to give instructions to the computer. So as machine language and assembly language, these are the two types of low-level languages. And in machine language, we are using binary codes in order to give instruction, whereas in assembly language, we are using mnemonic codes, or in other words, short forms in order to give instructions. So now we will be looking at these two types in detail. So what is a machine language? Machine language can be also called as machine code. This is a type of lower level language which is comprised of binary digits. So which are the binary digits? 1 and 0. So all the instructions that we are giving to a computer through machine language will be in the format of ones and zeros. We'll be only using ones and zeros in machine language. All the instructions are coded into ones and zeros. We are making it into a format that is in binary digits, and we are giving those instructions to the computer. So machine language, which is also called as machine code, is a low-level language, and it comprised of binary digits. And which are the binary digits? Ones and zeros. So only these two digits are there in the machine language or the machine code. This is highly understandable by the computer. This is machine-oriented language. So the instructions in the format of binary digits can be easily understood by the computers, but it is not that readable for human beings. We cannot understand machine language as a whole, but these computers can easily understand the machine languages. Okay. So basically, it is a set of symbolic instruction codes in binary form that is used to represent operations and data. So it is a set of symbolic instructional codes. You can call it the symbolic instruction codes, and these are formed with binary digits, which comprises or which represents the different operations and also the different data. Okay. So in other words, it is a series of bits that represent the instructions that a computer can understand. So bits generally comprises of ones and zeros, the binary digits. So it is a series of bits. So it's a series of bits that represents various instructions that a computer can understand. The machine language can be also called as first generation language, which is an important point that you have to remember. Machine language is also termed as, or it is also known as, first generation language. So here you have an example of machine language presented here. So this is just a program fragment that we have taken. So what this entire thing means, what this entire code means, that is shown below. Z is equal to x plus y. That is simply what this entire coding means. But we are making it into a machine language which can be understood by the computer. So we have to turn it into zeros and ones. So that is what given above, the 101, 00001. So we have an entire code there. That is what machine language is all about. The entire code means Z is equal to x plus y. That's all. But we are making it into binary codes or binary digits, a set of or series of bits that is representing a particular instruction or data. So that comprises of zeros and ones, binary digits. This is the language that the computer, the machine can easily understand. So we are making this is equal to x plus y into a machine language that can be easily understood by the computer. So machine language can be called as a language which comprises of binary digits. Which are the binary digits? Zeros and ones. Okay, so this is the basic idea of machine language. So we are learning about the low-level languages. Programming languages are of two types, low-level languages and high-level languages. And in low-level languages, we have machine language and also assembly language. So now we have completed the machine language. Now we are moving to the assembly language. So when we have discussed about the machine language, we said that machine language can be also termed as the first generation language, whereas assembly language can be also called as second generation knowledge. So basically both these languages contain same instructions, but in a machine language we said that the instructions are in the forms of numbers or binary digits. Right, but in assembly language, we are using certain names or certain codes in order to represent certain instructions. So that is the major difference between machine language and the assembly language. So what is the most important advantage of assembly language? It is readable. Okay, when we have discussed about machine language, we said that all the instructions are in it comprises of binary digits alone, zeros and ones. All the instructions are given in those formats, zeros and ones, binary digits, series of bits that representing the instructions and data. But in assembly language, what happens, we are using certain names, certain codes, so that, or we can call it as mnemonic codes, right, short forms. So in that case, these assembly language is more understandable than machine language. Basically, we cannot understand machine language, which is called it zeros and ones alone. But assembly language is more readable for humans. For example, if you want to move a particular file, you can choose the code MOV move. Or you want to add certain things, you can use the code ADD add. It is a form, a mnemonic form, a short form of addition. If you want to subtract something, you can use the mnemonic code SUB, subtraction, subtract. Okay, so these are the various codes that we are using in assembly language. So in machine language, we said that it is a low-level language that uses only binary digits, zeros and ones. But in assembly language, we are giving instructions to the computer. The function is the same, but we are not using numbers, but we are using certain codes. We are using certain names. Okay, so that is the major difference. And machine language is highly understandable for the computers, but humans cannot read it, whereas assembly language is more readable for humans. Another important aspect of assembly language is it is machine specific. So what is this machine specific? Programs are based on the configuration of the computer. So each of the computer have its own specifications, its own configurations. The programs are made based on those configurations. That means the program in assembly language in my laptop or in my desktop might not work in yours. So that is machine specific. The programs are based on the configuration of the computer. It is based on the specifications or the characterizations of the computer. That is another important point about assembly language. Okay. So now you have an example here, an image is given here which shows how an assembly language looks like. So if you look closer to it, you can see certain codes mentioned here. You have move, end and all that. So in assembly language, we are using these kinds of words, these kinds of mnemonic codes, short forms. Okay, this is an example of assembly language. So we said that in programming language, we have low-level languages and high-level languages. And in low-level languages, we have two types of languages. They are machine language and also assembly language. Machine languages are basically low-level languages which is comprised of binary digits, which includes only zeros and ones. And then we have discussed about assembly language. Assembly language, we said that we're giving instructions to the computer, but we are using certain codes, mnemonic codes. We are using short forms and not numbers. And that is readable for humans, and also it is machine oriented. These programs are made up of, or these programs are based on the configuration of the computer. So now we are moving to the high level languages. We have already discussed about the low level languages. Now we are moving to the second type of programming languages, that is high level languages. So high-level language is a programming language that is designed to simplify the computer programming. And what is the most important aspect of high-level language? It is easy to understand. It is readable. It is easy to use as well. So if we consider high-level languages, we can say that it is somewhat similar to the English that we are using. We have certain words that we are using in our day-to-day life, which is there in the high-level languages. So when you are seeing a high-level language, you can easily understand or you can easily identify those high-level languages. So high-level language is a programming language which is designed to simplify computer programming, and it is easy to understand and use by humans. So this is the peculiarity of high-level languages. But the thing is, it takes more time to execute the program. Why? The high-level languages are readable by the humans, but it is not readable by the machine. So we have to translate these high-level languages into a language or into a machine code that could be understood by the computer. So it will take more time for execution. So we said that high-level languages simplify the programming, computer programming. It is easy for humans to understand, or it is easy for humans to read and use those kind of languages. But what is the problem? What is about the execution part? It takes more time to execute because the programs need to be first translated before execution. Why? The high-level languages are readable and understandable for the humans, but it is not understandable for the machines. So we have to, at the first place, we have to translate these high-level languages into a particular machine code or to a particular language that is understood by the computer. So only after the translation we can execute the program. So that is one thing that we have to remember about high-level languages. And these languages are more or less independent of a particular type of computer. So when we have discussed about assembly languages, we said that it is machine specific. The programs are based on the configuration of the computers. So that is what we have discussed about assembly language. But what happens in high-level languages, these high-level languages are more independent. They are more independent of the particular type of computers. So high-level languages, as we have already studied, they are readable for humans, and it is easy for humans to use it. And it simplifies the computer programming as well, but it takes a bit more time because we have to, at the first place, translate those high-level languages to a particular format that could be understood by the computers. That is the initial part we have to do, and then only we can execute the program. And these languages, high-level languages, are more or less independent of the particular type of computer. So now we have a few examples here which shows you the high-level languages that are very common. The first one is COBOL. We have already discussed it in the initial part when we have discussed about the programming language as a whole. So COBOL is a high-level language which can be termed as, the full form of COBOL is Common Business Oriented Language. Then you have BASIC. BASIC, the full form of BASIC is Beginner's All-Purpose Symbolic Instruction Code. Then you have Fortran, another example for high-level language, which is Formula Translation. Then you have Pascal, Python, Java, so on and so forth. So these are a few examples of high-level languages. Okay. Now we are moving to the next part of our session, that is language processes. When we have discussed about the high-level language, we have said that high-level languages are easy to use and understood by the humans, but it is not the same for machines. So for the execution of programs that are in the high-level languages, we have to initially translate those languages into a particular format that could be understood by the computer or the machine. So there comes the importance of language processors. So to translate these high-level languages to a particular form, to a particular machine code, to a particular language that the computer can understand, we need language processors. So there comes the importance of language processors. So now we are going to that aspect of the programming languages. So what is a language processor? A language processor is a special translator system. These are basically translator systems that are used in order to translate high-level languages into machine code. These high-level languages can be called as source code. Okay. So these translators, the language processors, which is called as a translator system, that is used in order to translate the high-level language, which we can call it as the source code, into machine code. Machine code can be called as object program or object code. So the language processor is a special translator system used to turn a program written in a high-level language, which we call source code, into machine code, which we call object program or object code. So we have already discussed about high-level languages. That is not that understandable for the machines. That is understandable for humans. That is similar to our language, the English language that we are using. So to make it more understandable, or to make it understandable for the machine, we have to first translate those high-level languages into machine codes. So these high-level languages can be called as source codes, and that can be translated into machine codes, which can be called as object program or object codes. So for that purpose, we are using language processor. So basically, we are using it as a translating system or translator system. Okay, that is the basic idea. If we consider humans, for example, this is applicable in that case as well. If we are meeting a person who is speaking some other language and we don't have any kind of language in common, we need a translator in order to translate those languages to us so that we can understand what the person is saying. The same is applicable for us as well. If that person is not understanding our language, at times we need a translator so that person can translate our language, what we are saying, to that person. Translation is very common in these kind of communication when two people are involved in a communication and they are having different languages. So that is applicable for the computer programming languages as well. The computer cannot understand the high-level language, so we are using a translator system which can be called as language processor in order to make the computer understand, or in order to translate those high-level languages to a particular language the computer can understand. So the language processors can be of three types. There are three types of language processors, which includes assemblers, interpreters, and also compilers. So language processors or language translators, the translator system, they can be of three types. They are assembler, interpreter, and compiler. So basically, assembler is used for translating assembly language. When we have discussed about assembly language, we said that assembly language comes in between the machine language and the high-level language. In assembly language also, we are using certain codes, certain mnemonic codes, certain short forms. So the computer can only understand a machine-oriented language, that is in binaries. Okay, so we have to translate assembly language also into a machine code for the computers to understand. So in that case, assembler is the language processor that we are using in order to translate assembly language into machine code. So then we have the interpreter and compiler. Both of these are used for high-level languages. So both of these are used for the translation of high-level languages, but they are a bit different. So we'll be looking at these three language processors in detail. So as we have already said, assemblers, they are language processors which converts the programs which is written in assembly language into machine language. So we said that assembly language, they use mnemonic codes, they are using short forms. So we have to translate these assembly language to a machine language so that the computer or the machine can easily understand that. For that purpose, we are using a particular language processor or a particular translator system that can be called as assembler. It is easy for you to remember also. Assembler, which translate assembly language into machine language. Okay, so assemblers are basically language processors which converts the programs which are written in assembly language to machine language. Now we are coming to the other two types, the interpreter and compiler. Interpreter and compiler, both of them are used for the translation of high-level language into machine language. Assembler is used for converting or translating assembly language into machine language, whereas interpreter and compiler are used for the translation of high-level language into machine language. Then what is the difference between an interpreter and compiler? So that is what we are now going to study. So interpreter, this language processor converts a high-level language program into machine language by converting by line. We are converting it line by line. That is what the interpreter does. We said that the programs are the programs consist of various variables and various directions of the statements. So what the interpret does is that it scans a particular statement, it translates it and executes it. Then only it moves to the next statement. So when we are using an interpreter in order to translate the high-level language into a machine language or into a machine code, or the interpreter does, it scans a particular statement, translate, execute. Then only it moves to the next statement. That is what happens in an interpreter. It's a step-by-step process. It is converting these high-level languages into machine codes line by line, scanning a particular statement, translating it, executing it, then moving to the next statement, translating it and executing it. So that is the way in which interpreters translate high-level language into low-level language. And if there is any error found when the interpreter translate the high-level language into a machine code or into a machine language, if some kind of an error is found there, what happens? It reports it at the same time. If an error happens, it reports it at the same time, and the program execution cannot resume until it is rectified. So when we are using interpreters to translate high-level language into machine languages, we said that they are scanning a particular statement, then they are translating it, executing it. In between, if they found any kind of errors in the program, they will report it at that time itself, at the same time itself. So when an error is found, it reported at the same time, and the program execution cannot resume until it is rectified. If any kind of error is found in the program, first we have to rectify that error. Then only we can move to the next step. Then only the entire program execution will resume. So that is the peculiarity of interpreter. So what is a compiler? As we have already said, both the interpreter and the compiler, both of them are used for the translation of high-level language. Okay. But what is the difference between these two? A compiler scans the entire program and translate the whole of it into machine code at once. So if you're using compilers in order to translate high-level languages to machine codes, the compiler will translate the entire program once. It is translating the entire program as a whole. It will take the entire program, the whole program, and translate it for once. But when it comes to interpreter, it will take a particular statement, scan it, translate it and execute it, and then it will be moving into the next statement. And if there is any kind of errors found, it has to be reported. It will report those errors, and then we have to rectify those errors. Then only the entire execution of the program resumes. Okay, so that is the difference between interpreter and compiler. So we have discussed about language processors. The language processors are used in order to translate high-level languages to a language which is understood by the computer, or translating high-level languages into machine languages. So we have discussed about 3 types of language processors, which includes assembler. Then we have interpreter and compiler. Assembler is basically a language which comes in between machine language and the high-level language. It comes under the low-level language category itself, but it is somewhat more superior to the machine language. It comes in between the machine language and the high-level language. Okay. So for assemblers, if assemblers are used in order to convert assembly language to machine codes, and these compiler and interpreter are used in order to translate high-level language into machine codes or machine language. So what is the difference between interpreter and compiler? Both of them are used for the translation of high-level language, right? But what is the difference? Interpret, it scans a statement, then translate it and execute it, and then moves to the next one. But when it comes to compiler, it translates the entire program as a whole. Interpret does the process line by line, whereas compiler does the process as a whole. Okay, that is the difference between interpreter and compiler. So now we are moving to a few questions that were asked from this particular area. So here you have the first question that was asked in June 2020 in the recent exam. So the question is, Python is a or an? Very direct question. And you have the options: programming language, operating system, search engine, and snake. So basically, this is a very straight question. If you consider this question, you can understand. If you study the things that comes under ICT, this particular module, the questions become very easier for you. If you learn the things, you can easily answer those questions. So just study, just spend some time. You have different abbreviations and all that to study in this particular module. So spend some time and effort to study those areas, and you can score good marks in this particular module. So this is a very direct question. Python is a or an. You have the options: programming language, operating system, search engine, and snake. Obviously option D can be eliminated. And then you have the options: programming language, operating system, search engine. We have already learned about programming languages, and we set Python as an example for high level language as well. So if you have listened to the class, you can easily answer this question. So the correct answer for this question is option A, that is programming language. And what is this operating system and search engine? I will give you a few examples so that you can easily understand those two terms as well. Operating system, the best example for operating system is the Windows that you are using in your laptops and desktops. So that is an operating system that you are using. And what is an example for search engine? The Google that you are using, right? The Google that you are using in order to search various things in the net, in the web browsers. So that is the explanation for operating system and search engine. The question is very direct. If you know the programming languages, if you have studied that part, you can easily score 2 marks for this question. So Python is a or an programming language. The correct answer is option A. Now we are moving to the next question that was asked in December 2019. In computer-related activities, which of the following is inappropriate for describing a language translator? Again, a very direct question. See, this is how they are asking questions from this module. If you learn the things, you can easily answer the questions. Okay. So the question is, in computer-related activities, which of the following is inappropriate? That you have to mention there. You have to give a specific observation to that part. Inappropriate for describing a language translator. So which of these options can be called as language translators? We have to find out an option that is inappropriate to describe as a language translators. So you have the options: assembler, compiler, interpreter, and codec. So we have already discussed about the various language translators or the various language processors, right? We said that language processors are language translator systems. Okay. So which are the options that can be described as language translators? Assembler, compiler, and interpreter. We have already discussed these terms in our class. So from the options, which is inappropriate for describing a language translator, that is option D, obviously, codec. We haven't studied something like codec as a language translator. So option A and B, A, B, and C, they are translator, they are language processors. So the question is, in computer-related activities, which of the following is inappropriate for describing a language translator? And the correct answer is option D, that is codec. So now we are looking into option D, codec. So this is a good strategy that you can use for your preparations for NET exam. We know that practicing previous year question papers and practicing mock tests are very important in any competitive exam, and that is same for NET as well. So when you are practicing, after learning certain topics, when you are practicing the questions, you have to give special attention to the various options. So in these options, the options that we have in the previous question, we know the first 3 options. We have already learned those options: assembler, interpreter, and then we have the compiler. We know those options. But you have an option that is option D, that is codec. If you haven't heard about an option like that, you have to go for it. You have to search for that option, because you can expect a question from that option in the next exam. Right. So that is a particular strategy that you can follow when you are preparing for NET. Practicing question paper is a must in any competitive exam, and it is a very must thing in NET exam as well. So we are practicing that kind of a strategy also in this class. So in the previous question, we have found that assembler, compiler, and interpreter, these 3 are described as language translators, but we have an option that we haven't heard about. That is option D, codec. So we are looking for that option. What is a codec? Codec is a device or computer program which encodes or decodes a digital data stream or signal. So basically codec is a device, or you can call it as a computer program that is used in order to encode and decode digital signals or digital data stream. You just have to look for it. You just have an idea about the options that you haven't heard about. That's enough, but do that thing. Okay, that is a good thing that you can do when you are working out with questions and the previous years. Okay, so now we are moving into the next question that is again asked in December 2019. Which of the following is a programming language? So in June 2020, we had a question, Python is a, and the answer was programming language. They are asking the same question but twisted. So this is another peculiarity that you have to note from this particular module as well. You will be having questions repeated, but the way they are asking the questions will be different. So in 2019 December, you have a question, which of the following is a programming language? Same question in June 2020, Python is, and you have the option programming language. Same idea, same question, but they have changed the way it has asked, or the way the question asked was different. Okay, so in December 2019, we have a question, which of the following is a programming language? And you have the option deep learning, machine learning, artificial intelligence, and finally Python. If you have listened to the class, a very direct question, you can easily answer this question. We haven't learned about deep learning, machine learning, or artificial intelligence, or they cannot be called as programming languages. The best option and the correct option for this question is option D, that is Python. Okay, so we are using the strategy that we have already learned. We have three other options, right? So if we haven't heard about those options, we have to search for those options and learn it. So that is a strategy we will be following in these kinds of modules, that in which we have to memorize a lot of things. Okay, so we have three other options that are artificial intelligence, deep learning, and machine learning, which is mentioned in that question. So we are going for those options as well. So what is an artificial intelligence or AI? It refers to the simulation of human intelligence in machines that are programmed to think like humans and mimic their actions. So basically, in AI, it refers to the simulation or the imitation of human intelligence in machines. So the machines are programmed in such a way that the machines will think like humans, and they will mimic the actions of human actions. So that is AI, artificial intelligence. So intelligence is a peculiarity of human beings, and we are creating artificial intelligence. We are programming machines so that the machines can think like humans, or it can mimic the human actions. So that is the basic idea of artificial intelligence. Then we have an option that is deep learning. Deep learning is also associated with AI. So if you consider this question, the other option, three options that you have other than the Python, all those options are associated with artificial intelligence. So if you go for those three options, you have an idea about artificial intelligence as a topic as well. So this is a merit of doing this kind of a thing, learning the options when you are doing the question papers. So we have learned about artificial intelligence. Then we have the second option, that was deep learning. And what is deep learning? An AI function that mimics the workings of the human brain in processing data. So deep learning is also associated with AI. That is an AI function, and that mimics the workings of human brain. So deep learning, basically the machines are mimicking the human brain in processing data. That is deep learning. So that is another thing that we have learned from that single question. What was the third option? That is machine learning. What is machine learning? That is also associated with artificial intelligence. An application of AI, that is artificial intelligence, that provides systems the ability to automatically learn and improve from experience without being explicitly programmed. That means the machine itself is capable of learning from its own experiences. It will learn and improve from the experience. We don't have to give all the programs. We don't have to give all the programs explicitly. The machine will work, and from the experience, the machine will automatically recognize the failures or the errors that happen. So the machine itself learn and improve from the experiences. So this kind of an ability that we are giving to a machine, or this is associated with artificial intelligence, and it provides a system this kind of an ability to automatically identify the things that is happening or automatically learn and improve from experiences. We don't have to give everything programmed. We don't have to program everything explicitly. The machine itself will learn from the experiences. That is machine learning. All right. So in this session, we have discussed about programming languages. So in order to understand programming language, we have first looked at the question, what is a program? And we said that a program is a list of instructions that we are giving to the computer so that the computer can execute the specific task. Then we said that there are programming languages. We have program, we have instructions, but we have to make sure that the computer understands those instructions, right? So for that purpose, we are using certain languages. That languages can be called as programming languages. So the instructions are given to the computer in a specific language that is understood by the computer. So that kind of a language can be called as programming languages. Then programming languages can be categorized into two types. We have the low-level languages and the high-level languages. And then we said that low-level languages can be again divided into two types. They are machine language and assembly language. In machine language, all the instructions are in the form of binary digits, which includes ones and zeros. Okay, then we said that after that we discussed about assembly language. In assembly language, we are using mnemonic codes. We are using short forms. So that was the next category that we have discussed under low-level languages. Then we move to the high-level languages. We said that this is more readable. This is somewhat similar to the English that we are using. And for these types of languages, we need a translator in order to translate the language into a form that is understood by the computers. Okay, so then we have moved to the language processors or the translator system. So we said that high-level language and also the assembly language that we have discussed in low-level languages that cannot be easily understood by the machine. The machine can only understand machine codes or machine-oriented languages. So we have to, at the initial part, we have to translate those high-level languages into a particular format or into machine codes that could be understood by the computer. So then only the computer can work according to the instructions. So there comes the relevance of language processors. So language processors basically translate those programs which are written in high-level language into machine codes. That is the major purpose of language processors. Then we have moved to the different types of language processors, which includes assembler, interpreter, and compiler. So we said that assembler is used to translate assembly language to machine codes, whereas both interpreter and compiler are used for the translation of high-level languages into machine codes. So what is the difference between interpreter and compiler? Both of them are used for the translation of high-level languages into machine codes. But what's the difference? Interpreter, it scans a particular statement, it translates it, then execute it. After that only they move to the next statement. That is the way that the interpreter translates the high-level language. So it goes line by line. We can say it like that. And what is compilers? Compilers are also language processors that translate high-level language into low-level language, but it translates the entire program as a whole. It translates it for once. So that is the difference between interpreter and compiler. Okay, then we have discussed a few questions that were asked from the previous year, and we have also learned a strategy that we can use for modules like this. The questions are very direct from these modules. So what we can do, we can learn the things, we can learn the different topics that comes under ICT, and also make sure that you are doing previous year questions or you are doing practice questions. So when you are practicing different types of questions, you can get more options like this. So if you are finding an option which is not known to you or which is unknown to you, just go and find out what that option is. So that will give you extra knowledge. So we don't know, at the next exam, you might get a question from that option. itself. So I hope that this session was clear for you, and we have started our online and classroom classes here in Appleby Academy. So if you need any further information about our classes, please do feel free to contact us in the number that is shown below. We'll be providing personal mentors for you for your paper 1 preparations. If you need a guide for you, just contact us. You'll be having personal mentors assisting you in your preparations for Inter UGC NET and JRF paper 1. So I hope this session will help you in your preparations for Inter UGC NET and JRF paper 1. Thank you.